my favorite choice just because they lock up the money, they're complex, and they often will have high.
お祈りお願いします。
今からジムにストレッチをしに行くように、事故のないように気をつけましょう。イエス・キリスト、今日も見守ってください。
アメン。昨日は田舎がありましたに平和に、そしてあなたを求め賛美していくことができることを願います。どうにかこのような、結果に終わることではなく、新しい方向へと、向かうことを祈っております。私たちがまだ未熟でわからないところもあると思いますが、どうにかしよう、あなたに感謝します。どうにかあなたの栄光を、信じて、そして栄光を満たしていくことができるように、あなたの御顔を、常に、クリスチャンとして、私たち自身があなたを賛美して、求めていくことができるように、お祈りいたしております。この祈りを主イエスキリストの皆によってお祈りします。アーメン。
Certified Kingdom Advisors there in Alabama and find one that's a good fit, or you can manage it yourself and just kind of construct the portfolio in the way that I mentioned.
The annuities you mentioned, is that the where you do the insurance? Basically, you buy an insurance policy and you tie up your money for 6 months so they can invest it. And is that basically describing the annuity?
Yeah, so essentially annuities, are a financial product, usually from an insurance company, that lets you turn a lump sum of money eventually into an income stream. And there's a couple of types of annuities. So there's a fixed annuity that pays a guaranteed rate, kind of like a certificate of deposit. And then there's variable annuities that let you invest in the market. So you have a little bit more risk and growth potential, but often they provide a floor. So you give up some of the upside of the investments in exchange for downside protection. So they won't let you lose money in those. And then there's immediate annuities where you give them a lump sum of money and they start paying you a monthly income stream for life right away. And then there's deferred annuities, which are usually grow tax deferred until you take the income later. And people tend to use them because in retirement they're trying to create predictable income that they can't outlive. But the downside, and everything comes with trade-offs, is they have fees. They can be costly. They're complex, so there's a lot of fine print, and not all of them are created equal, so you got to understand what you're getting. And there are surrender charges, meaning typically for the 6 to 8 years after you go into one, you might be limited to taking out 10% a year without penalties. And so if you needed to get to larger chunks of money, it can be costly inside an annuity product. But people use them because they like the ability to get an above inflation rate of return with safe downside protection, and then you could convert it to an income stream if you needed that at some point. It hits the card, and the next step, pay it electronically on their website. But I think in either case, we want to pay for this in full right away. The only question is, if there is no surcharge, do you want to put it on the card, get the points, and then pay it off? I don't have any problem with that.
Okay. Thank you. My second question is, I have about right around about $20,000 sitting in the USAA account, and I'm not getting anything for it. No, I'm not getting any interest. You know how the banks are these days. But but the reason I use it is because it's easy access to the money. So what's a better way of doing that?
Yeah. How important is it for you to have a brick and mortar branch to walk into? Is that critical?
I don't have one of those. I mean, I do everything
Okay.
through my phone.
Well, I'll tell you, our banking partner here at FaithFi is Christian Community Credit Union. We love those folks, and you can be assured that everything you're doing, you have a banking partner that's aligned with your values as a Christ follower. If you're comfortable going to the web, I'd go to faithfi.com/banking. That's faithfi.com/banking. And not only do they have great rates on their savings and a great website and app, but for FaithFi listeners, they're giving up to a $400 bonus. Just use the keyword FaithFi. So that would be a great option. More and more of our listeners are wanting to be with a banking partner that shares their values, especially with what's going on culturally. So again, that's faithfi.com/banking. If you want just to find who has the very best rate today across all the online banks in the country, I'd go to bankrate.com and click high yield savings, and they'll give you a list as of today of who has the highest rates. Antonio, thanks for your call. Thanks for your kind remarks about the program, sir. You've been a blessing. Well, big thanks to my team today. Hey, don't forget, folks, still an opportunity to help us close the gap and reach these additional 207 young girls and vulnerable young women in Lebanon. Go to faithfi.com/Lebanon to learn more. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG Greenville, Dallas. Stay informed. Sure, you can find all kinds of sources for information and commentary, but when you want them from a Christian perspective, turn to The Stand. Whether you choose to read the online blog or get the print version delivered to your mailbox, you can rest assured you'll receive factual news and biblically sound commentary. Find out more today at afa.net/The Stand. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to exact a full price from Iran on Thursday after a ballistic missile struck the Soroka hospital in southern Israel. More than 80 people were injured. Netanyahu says the fact that Iran targeted a hospital tells you all you need to know about that evil regime.
I think it says everything about Israel and about Iran. Israel is fighting to remove the nuclear and missile threat aimed at our annihilation. We're targeting military sites. We're targeting nuclear sites. We're targeting missile sites. They're targeting a hospital. In this hospital, there are patients who are immobile. They can't even move. Right next to it is a children's ward, a baby's ward, infants. They targeted.
Israeli Special Envoy Mahal Cutler-Wunsch says Iran is not going to give up its nuclear program.
I would say the chances are zero voluntarily giving up. And we have seen systematically this genocidal Islamic regime in Iran utilize billions of its resources, fueled by the very same anti-Semitism that saw the annihilation of Jews in a final solution before their eyes, even as the Allies were nearing. That is what we're experiencing now. As you mentioned, the largest hospital in Israel's south was targeted deliberately. And as Iran continues to target civilians, children.
8 people are now confirmed dead after deadly flash floods hit Ohio County in West Virginia. Jill Nato has more.
Homes and businesses destroyed, roads washed out, and cars waterlogged after more than 4 inches of rain hit much of West Virginia's Ohio County near Wheeling this past weekend. Cleanup and recovery efforts are underway as the search is still on for potential victims. Governor Patrick Morrisey.
We can honor their memory by coming together and doing everything we can to help remaining people that might be out there and help rebuild in Ohio County.
The state's National Guard is on hand to help, and those impacted are being asked to document damage to their homes in order to qualify for potential aid from FEMA.
Yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Tennessee's ban on gender manipulation and mutilation of children. California attorney Aaron Friday says more states should follow suit after that Supreme Court ruling.
Right now, we have 27 states that have restrictions on gender interventions on children. Gavin Newsom and his attorney general already have stated that they're going to continue to push forward with gender interventions on kids. So the blue states need help, so we need congressional action.
It's a very important case, not just for people in Illinois. That's the response from a gun rights organization in this story from Chris Woodward.
In 2023, Illinois passed a law known as the Protect Illinois Communities Act. It prohibits the possession of what Illinois deems assault weapons, which are just common semi-automatic rifles, including the AR-15, the most popular rifle in America. The act also prohibits what it deems large-capacity magazines. Governor J.B. Pritzker says this is about safety, but Joseph Greenlee of the National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action says the law is wrong, and for a few reasons.
The Supreme Court has said that the Second Amendment prevents the government from banning weapons that are commonly possessed for lawful purposes, and these arms are unquestionably common. There's over 28 million of these AR-style rifles that Illinois prohibits, and over 500 million of the magazines that it prohibits. And then the Second Amendment ensures that the people have the right and ability to decide which arms we can keep and bear.
The case is currently going before the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. That's after federal judge Stephen McGlynn, a Trump appointee, said the law is unconstitutional. I'm Chris Woodward.
Shares retreated in Europe and Asia as worries persist about conflict in the Middle East. Oil prices rose and U.S. futures declined. U.S. financial markets are closed today for a federal holiday. More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome everybody to today's issues. Today's issues. It is Thursday, June 19th. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning. Welcome to the Down Under version of today's issues.
Down Under. I did watch a Crocodile Dundee movie here this week. I think that must be why.
Okay.
Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles or something. Yeah, pretty harmless flick. The guy was Paul Hogan's getting pretty old, but anyway, so my wife knows if I watch, by the way, Chris Woodward, good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning.
But my wife knows if I watch a movie that has something, the accent, you know, if it's a Boston accent or, you know, a mob movie with, hey, what are you guys looking at? I will for the next day or two walk around the house talking that way. So if I watch a Crocodile Dundee or probably anything with an Australian or British accent, I'll walk around.
I am always amazed at how easily a person from the UK can come over here and portray an American in a movie and just nail our accent.
Mm-hmm. That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we do it and we sound like Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins, and it's offensive. Like how we, you know, I mean, it's I don't know, like Jude Law, he was in Cold Mountain years ago, nailed a Southern accent, but then there's like Americans that try to do a Southern accent in a movie, and it's terrible.
Isn't Tom Holland the young guy who plays Spider-Man?
Yes.
He's from Britain.
He is, yes.
And it is weird. You hear them interviewed, and they start talking to that British accent, and you go, Wow, he was imitating us all this time.
The guy from House is from the UK as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, by the way, it is Juneteenth. This is a federal holiday in the United States, celebrated annually on June 19th to commemorate the ending of slavery in the United States. And listen, that was a great accomplishment to try to solve a terrible time in not just American history, but human history. We ended slavery in this country and the British Empire, with the tip of the hat to the British. William Wilberforce and others ridding the entire British Empire of slavery. A lot of things continued to happen after the ending of slavery in this country, especially down here in the South, with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and segregation. All kinds of things continued, but it is important to note the ending of slavery, and a lot of people celebrate that, and we have a federal holiday today. So for those of you who are typically at work, working for the federal government, but you're at home, enjoy the day off and remember, I think just a great moment in human history as countries began, because so many countries had slavery back 100, 200 years ago. But also, folks continue to pray because slavery continues. Mm-hmm. Human trafficking continues. It's interesting, by the way, I didn't intend to start this. I want to mention Juneteenth, but at the end of the book of Revelation, there is a list, or it may be talking about Babylon, but talks about the fact that Babylon the Great trafficked in human souls. Very interesting wording there as part of the iniquity of whatever you think Babylon represents in the book of Revelation. That was something, obviously, that God abhorred.
Yes.
So anyway, happy Juneteenth to those of you who mark this holiday.
Yes. My daughter works for a bank. I'm not bitter. She's off today.
Well, I could talk to leadership for next year.
All right.
See if we could have Juneteenth off.
All right.
There's all kinds of federal holidays we don't get off here.
Oh, I know. I'm aware of that, Ed.
President's Day. When you worked up in Canada for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which was public broadcasting, right? I mean, you had all those federal holidays off. The ones that Canada had, right?
And they've increased since I left Canada.
Yeah.
I think there's one every month now.
Yeah. That would be nice. That would be nice.
They have Family Day. They have, province has a birthday. They get a lot of time off there.
We could celebrate my birthday in August. We could have that. We could have that as a holiday here.
Yes.
We need here at AFA. We need a holiday once a month. Because you go through that January, February, March time at the beginning of the year with nothing.
And January feels like 6 months. Like it takes forever to get through January for some reason.
And then if Easter is later, if it's in April, you go through all of March without something.
All right, so make some placards, Ed. We'll stand up front.
Yes.
We'll welcome Jim back next week.
I will say that if anybody's concerned, if AFA does start to take off more holidays, the news department will be here and covering things.
Yeah, we don't care about the news department.
Yeah, I know. 15 years I've been here, and not once have I been given off for Arbor Day.
Arbor Day. Well, I will say this. Kudos to our news department, because a lot of times when we have a Monday off, like a Memorial Day or something like here at work, we've kind of gotten into the habit of closing the offices at noon on Friday, just to give people a head start for the long weekend. But you guys in news have to stay. You guys don't get to do that.
Well, it's because the news never stops.
Right.
It really doesn't. And as we have found out, strangely enough, since Donald Trump was reelected president, got to watch Friday afternoons, because he really likes Friday afternoon executive orders.
Yeah.
And they're usually pretty big items.
Yeah.
So we can't go home until President Trump is through.
Sometimes we've had newscasts from my living room / home office for people who are not aware. If you can pull it off and nobody knows,
All right, well, let's get started with the news of the day. There's plenty of it, Chris.
Yes, airstrikes continue between Israel and Iran. This, of course, has been going on for a week now. And in one of its most recent attacks on Israel, missiles from Iran hit an Israeli hospital that did pretty significant damage there, injured patients inside the hospitals and staff there. And this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was at the site of the hospital attack in Beersheba, and he had this to say, clip 1.
I think it says everything about Israel and about Iran. Israel is fighting to remove the nuclear and missile threat aimed at our annihilation. We're targeting military sites. We're targeting nuclear sites. We're targeting missile sites. They're targeting a hospital. In this hospital, there are patients who are immobile. They can't even move. Right next to it is a children's ward, a baby's ward, infants. They targeted.
Well, Fred, this is a difference between the two nations. Now, I know there are a lot of people in this country and throughout the West that are just hammering Israel and have been since their response to the attack on October 7th, 2023 from Hamas.
Yes.
Out of Gaza. Everything Israel does, they're being criticized. But that is a clear demarcation between these two regimes. Israel is targeting military installations, and they're going after Iran's capability to develop nuclear weapons, which Iran has promised to use against Israel.
That's right.
Okay, and Iran, in response, is just letting missiles fly into populated areas in order to kill as many civilians as possible, which makes doubly clear the fact that in their ideology and worldview, the extermination of the Jews and the elimination of the nation of Israel is what they are trying to accomplish.
No question. Let's say
both ending enslavement and the initial
attack
holiday in 2021.
Because we now know Hamas has made their headquarters in places like hospitals and schools. Right? So there is a huge difference. And Israel, in order to take out the Hamas terrorists, has had to deal with sites like hospitals in Gaza. However, here's the difference. Israel, and it's continuing in this war, warns. They warn people, we're going to have to go into this particular area to root out Hamas terrorists. They give warnings in advance. They're doing the same thing in Iran.
Right.
We're planning to bomb this area. If you're a civilian, it's wise for you to get out.
Yes.
You know, and right from the beginning, I remember Prime Minister Netanyahu, when this all started last week, his first speech was to the Iranian people, saying, we're not against you. We want you to be allies with us in this. No, they're going after the leadership, the Islamic regime leadership, which is exactly what they have done. And by the way, Israel is being very successful. In these first 7 days, they've been able to take out 2/3 of the missile launchers that Iran has. They have about 100 left, so it's not over yet. I think the thing we're going to be watching is the United States. The speculation is building more and more as to whether the United States will get involved. As we sit here right now, there is another security meeting at the White House in the Situation Room. There was a headline this morning in the Wall Street Journal that said President Trump has made the decision to go into Iran and do what we've been talking about. This is bunker bomb that only our B-2s can carry and deliver.
In other words, Israel can't drop it.
No, Israel does not have the aircraft capable of doing that. So this morning, President Trump kind of said, well, the Wall Street Journal doesn't know what I'm thinking. But that's not a denial of the fact that there is a plan in place. And I think if they're going to take out this facility, this one major facility in Iran that is used to enrich that uranium and is almost at the point, if not at the point, of having it ready for a nuclear weapon. If that is going to be done, because this facility is deep inside a mountain in Iran, The only way to get at that would be with this bunker buster bomb. And so I continue to say maybe within 2 or 3 days we may see that. And of course, the world will condemn the United States. You should stay out of it. There will be politicians in the United States.
There will be even people in the MAGA community.
Yes.
That will be critical of the president.
Yeah, that you shouldn't get involved. But let us remember, the Islamic regime as it is, they not only hate Israel, but they hate the United States.
We're the great Satan.
Yes.
They call us.
They want to wipe Israel and the United States off the face of the earth. That is their goal. So this would, in my mind, if the United States gets involved, it would be interpreted as an offensive, but in my mind, it's a defensive to stop this horrible, evil regime.
Yeah, you have more sound on this subject?
Yeah, we do have some sound again on the bunker busting bombs. I know yesterday we had a Top Gun pilot whose call sign was Wiz talking about these bunker buster bombs. Fox and other news outlets continue to cover this, not just the Wall Street Journal. I've got some audio this morning of a guy, he's retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Dave Burke, a Top Gun instructor, talking about these bombs. Clip 5.
Our ability to launch from the United States, if we choose to, or a forward deployed base, getting to the target and back is absolutely in the wheelhouse of the capability of that aircraft. And I would expect to see multiple aircraft on this mission. And there's a lot of challenges. Obviously, anytime you take an American aircraft, American air crew, American systems, and fly into enemy territory, there is risk. The great thing about these B-2 crews, they've been practicing and preparing for this their entire careers. They are more than capable of doing this. This is things they've prepared and trained for. So once the mission starts, they're focused on that. There are certainly risks associated with the mission itself, but these are highly trained, highly capable people that are more than ready to do this.
Well, and Israel, I think, has kind of laid some of the groundwork by going after these surface-to-air missile SAM batteries. Obviously, some of that has been to protect their own aircraft, but I think they have tried to degrade the capability of Iran to protect itself from these bombers. Now, the B-2 is a stealth bomber, and so they do have protections against radar detection, but it's not foolproof, so you want to try to increase your odds. I think it can you can also launch from B-52 bombers. One thing that's interesting is that I was looking at an article on Fox where Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said that the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, have been instructed that Khamenei should not continue to exist. Now, that's the dictator of the religious dictatorship over Iran. Now, that is not an explicit threat that Israel will take out Khamenei. Maybe it's encouraging pro-democratic forces within Iran to do the dirty work. But it is interesting, that statement came after the hospital was bombed, that, Fred, that is Israel, you've made this point on a number of occasions, that after the October 7th attack, it was like something flipped within Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu and others on his leadership team, that they're not putting up with this anymore.
Yeah.
That they are going to clean house. They degraded Hamas's capability to continue being a threat, Hezbollah, and of course Iran, who has funded those two terrorist organizations. Now it's like they're saying they're not going to continue to exist in their current form either. I wouldn't be surprised to see Israel try to take Khamenei out.
Yeah.
That would garner a lot of condemnation, but I think at this point Israel just doesn't care, because they cannot allow that country to get atomic weapons and launch them against Israel. This is an existential threat that Iran poses. I think the fact that some of the other Muslim countries in the region, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, some others. I think Syria also allowed Israel to use its airspace. Okay, I think they all understand that a nuclear-capable Iran is bad for everyone in that region.
Well, it destabilizes the whole region. You know, I think what has happened is that Israel, for years now, they would have these skirmishes with Hamas and Hezbollah, and, you know, there would be some kind of mediation talks, and they would back away from it, and it only allowed Hezbollah and Hamas to rearm and to do the same thing again and again and again. And I think what happened in October of 2023, as you say, Israel just said, enough is enough. They have proven they cannot be trusted. Certainly Iran has proven it cannot be trusted. Right. It's not interested in peace. It has made no statements to the world that we only want peace with Israel. Right. It's 180 degrees to that. Can you imagine if, you know, we're sitting here in the United States, if you were sitting in Texas and there was a terrorist group just on the other side of the border, whose goal in life, whose raison d'etre in life is to destroy the United States, and that they had cells in various places around that were threatening the stability of this nation all the time. We would not put up with that, not for a second. Right. Yet here's the thing, yet the world expects Israel to put up with that. And Netanyahu has just said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. It's as simple as that. This war cannot end unless something is done with the leadership there in Iran.
Yeah, because this is, even if you completely eliminate the nuclear threat from Iran for now, that if Khamenei and the others in charge want to reconstitute that, they'll continue to do so.
Yes.
By the way, folks, we do have also an article on American Family News, that's AFN.net, that talks about this Iranian missile that damaged the hospital in Beersheba. And also it does mention the fact that Trump has addressed the plans. Actually, the article here from the Associated Press says that President Donald Trump this week had vetoed an Israeli plan to kill Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Trump vetoed that plan. And then Trump later said there were no plans to kill him, at least not for now.
Yes.
So Trump, very wisely, it seems to me, has kept every possibility still on the table. Mm-hmm. You know, he has said, well, we may strike this nuclear installation, or we might not.
Yeah.
There's no plans to kill Khamenei right now, but he's leaving it on the table. And at some point, he may tell the Israelis, go ahead.
So some people steeped in things like Bible prophecy might be watching this and wondering, well, where is Russia on all this? Because you have things in the Bible like Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, Gog and Magog, talking about. And therefore, some people might wonder, where is Russia on all this? Well, according to Donald Trump, President Trump, Vladimir Putin has offered to get involved here. But according to President Trump, I told Vladimir, you focus on Russia. Don't take my word for it, clip 12.
And I spoke to him yesterday, and I said, you know, he actually offered to help mediate. I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later.
Apparently, they're on a first-name basis.
I wonder if he calls him Vlad. Yeah. Hey, Vlad.
Hey, Vlad. Vlad. Listen, by the way, Chris did mention Bible prophecy, and I do want to let you know, I hope this is okay to do on the air. We were planning on having Jan Markell on at the bottom of the hour, but she has some health issues. And so I just wanted to ask our listeners to pray for Jan Markell. And many of you love her program on the weekends, Understanding the Times. By the way, that's heard Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central, Sunday at 12 p.m. Central Time here on American Family Radio. But if you've enjoyed her ministry, just pray for her. Pray for her health and pray that she gets well. And so I hope she doesn't mind me sharing that about prayer.
No, absolutely. We have talked to Jan about this early on in the last week or so. And a lot of people are asking, you know, is this Ezekiel 38? and 39. And Jan's response was she doesn't think so for a couple of reasons. Those chapters in Ezekiel talk about a coalition of countries coming after us. I don't think we are there yet. China is saying nothing about this.
Right.
I think I think China is using this as a distraction to keep the world's attention there while they're up to other things.
Yeah.
I think their focus is really in the Pacific Rim right now.
Right.
And I think they've got stuff going on there. And they're quite glad for the world to be looking at what's going on in the Middle East while they're up to other things.
Right.
I don't trust China for a second. Russia's got its hands full with Ukraine. And I think, President Trump is exactly right. So those are the countries that many people feel, plus a few others, Turkey, that would be involved in Ezekiel 38, 39.
Right.
So that's why I think Jan says no. She believes that is likely to occur, that she is in her eschatology. She believes in the tribulation period.
Right.
And 38 and 39 would occur at the end of that period. I think for now we are at the point where it's Israel and Iran and possibly the United States.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take our break now. And do you have any other stories related to this for after the break, Chris?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, just if we've got more news regarding it, we can cover that after the break. But there are also other things happening. We'll get to those ASAP, as soon as possible. And but we are going to take a short break. You're listening to today's issues here on American Family Radio. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. Fred Jackson joins me, Chris Woodward. And when we come back after our break, we will get back to the news.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
In the book of Psalms, we read these words. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Jerusalem is located some 33 miles east of the Mediterranean Sea and some 14 miles west of the Dead Sea. For some 25 to 30 centuries, it has been a holy city. Today, it is the center of three major religions: Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. It is a city well known to millions of Bible readers. David and Solomon lived in this city. So did Isaiah and Jeremiah, and a host of other Old Testament figures. It was in this city that Stephen became the first Christian martyr. In this city also James, the brother of John, died at the hands of Herod Agrippa I about AD 44. Agrippa was the grandson of Herod the Great. The city is literally covered with biblical landmarks. Some are authentic. Some are marked only by legend and tradition. The Dome of the Rock, a Muslim mosque, is a distinguishing mark in the city. It is constructed on the site of Solomon's temple and over the rock where Abraham is supposed to have offered Isaac as a sacrifice. Always in Scripture, those who went to the city were going up to Jerusalem. This is true for two reasons. The city is located on hills at a height of some 2,600 feet above sea level. So the journey was a physical trip up. But more than this, Jerusalem was considered the most holy city in the world. So then it was also a spiritual journey up to the city. The best view of the city is offered from the Mount of Olives. Standing atop this mountain and looking across the Kidron Valley to the city, one can see reminders of centuries of biblical history. In fact, every place associated with the last week in the life of Christ is visible from the Mount of Olives. Jesus came to this city often. His first visit was as a baby, perhaps slightly more than a month old. His last visit was probably just prior to his ascension. In the temple courtyard, located immediately east of the present Dome of the Rock, he taught the crowds. In Jerusalem, he ate the Last Supper with his disciples. It was here that he was arrested, tried, and crucified. It was here that he arose from the dead. The name of the city means City of Peace. It is misleading, for throughout its history, the city has known very little peace. It has been destroyed and rebuilt many times. Perhaps the most famous destruction was that by Titus, the Roman general, in AD 70. That destruction was prophesied by Jesus some 40 years earlier. Pilgrims by the multitude still flock to this city. They come from every race and every nation. Many of them have one thing in common. They are followers of the Christ who visited here, and they have come to see places made universally famous by the one they follow.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. Colossians 1:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back. Ed Battagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week, joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Chris Woodward. Chris, I know we got a couple other angles just to take on this Israeli-Iranian conflict.
Yeah. For those just now joining us, our top story that we started the show with was about Iranian missiles damaging a hospital in Israel and wounding more than 200. We played some audio of Benjamin Netanyahu. Israelis are naturally upset about this and vowing Iran is going to pay here. I've got more sound on this topic, beginning with IDF International Spokesman Nadav Shoshani, if I said the name correctly. This person says Iran's targeting of the hospital is why Israel cannot let up here in this war. Clip 3.
Well, this is an ongoing operation, and our goals are very clear: to remove these existential threats from the civilian of Israel. And we're seeing this is a preview. This morning, we saw a preview of what could happen if we let Iran keep going this way. And their goal was to have thousands and thousands of these ballistic missiles on Israeli civilians, and on top of that, nuclear weapons.
All right, so we kind of talked about this before the break. It does appear that, Fred, that Iran may be running out of some of their missiles. However, to this gentleman's point, had Israel not engaged at this point, that number of missiles that could be launched against the nation of Israel would have only gone up.
Yep. As I think I mentioned, they only have about 100 left. Israel has been successful so far in these first 7 days of taking out 2/3 of Iran's missile launcher capability. Again, we're amazed by the Israeli intelligence. Right now, there are no secrets in Iran.
Right.
Israel knows where you are and what military equipment you're moving and where you're moving it to.
Well, and you mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before, it's all the days kind of melting into each other, but that the military leader that had gotten taken out by the Israelis was replaced by another military leader, and 4 days later, he was taken out.
Yeah.
So the Israelis know, like you said, who's where.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the guy in Iran when you're approached by the leader that says, "Do you want this job?" No, don't want it at all. By the way, just before coming into the studio, the sirens were going off in Haifa, which is that port city up in the north, which is a little change in tactic because the Iranians have been attacking after dark. This is broad daylight, kind of late afternoon, 8 hours, so they're about 6 o'clock at 6:30 in the evening there. So this is it may be a sign of desperation. That they're getting down to the last of the equipment that they have. And maybe this is part of where Israel is with this. Iran is going to run out of ordnance. They have been firing everything they've got, and they only have a little bit left. Because the Israelis, once again, are very good. They know where the weapons are being stored.
Right.
And so they're taking care of all of that, the Israelis, at this moment. By the way, we have another story on our website, afn.net, that the U.S. has started evacuating some of its diplomats from the embassy there in Jerusalem. We're not sure how they're getting out. We understand some of these people are going to Amman, Jordan, being flown out of there. I mentioned that there was an El Al flight that left Tel Aviv, I think early this morning, around 11 o'clock in the morning, Israeli time, and it went to Cyprus. Cyprus is trying to help people who want to get out of Israel right now, get out of harm's way. So there are some flights that are going to Cyprus, and people are evacuating through there.
Well, it seems clear, and then Chris will pitch it to you if you've got anything else here on this topic. It seems clear that it seems to me that the U.S. is preparing to bomb this nuclear facility.
Mm-hmm. I will not be surprised.
I would not be surprised either, and that they expect that to maybe ramp up Iran's desperation.
Mm-hmm.
But President Trump's always full of surprises. You never really know what he's thinking, and that's part of the deterrence factor in terms of other countries wanting to take advantage of a weak leader like Joe Biden clearly was. You don't get that from Trump. So a lot of nations, may hesitate to do something, not really knowing what Trump might do. And
Defense Secretary Hegseth was before I think it was a Senate panel this week, was asked obviously about this, and he was very coy, but he did say, we have plans in place for whatever President Trump wants to do. So they're ready for this.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of sound bites I saw on Fox yesterday. Senator Rand Paul was expressing concern that, he didn't want Trump to just rush into something here because as Rand Paul went out, I don't have this sound bite, Brent, but as Rand Paul said on Fox, that if we were to go this route where we nuke them, or at least this facility, that's going to make it difficult, if not impossible, that we're going to bring them to the table to talk about nuclear research. And then they bring out John Cornyn to respond to Senator Paul's comments, and Cornyn said the time for negotiation is over.
I like Rand Paul on a lot of issues, but that's just that strikes me as naive. I think anytime Iran has quote unquote negotiated, I think in reality they were just stalling for time.
Right.
And they were stringing along the West, all while this is the same thing with Hamas. With Hamas, all this time, international aid flowing in there, and what Hamas was doing was taking that and building tunnels. Tearing up pipes that carried water and using materials to help with launching missiles. You're dealing with an ideology that insists that Israel must cease to exist as a nation and that the Jewish people must be obliterated. And there is no negotiating with that. I understand what Senator Paul is saying. If you're dealing with rational people, then maybe you can negotiate and get them to take a step back. But this is what the Ayatollah Khomeini and the rest of those mullahs live for. And I agree with, was it Cornyn?
Cornyn, yeah.
I agree with Senator Cornyn of Texas. The time for negotiation is over. And whether it's Israel or Israel and the U.S., Iran's nuclear research has to come to an end.
Yes, and to your point here, we'll put a kind of round bow on this segment here. I've got some audio. This will be our last clip on this topic, but it's the Israeli special envoy who says Iran is not going to give up its nuclear program no matter what people say. Clip 4.
So thank you, Carly, for having me on. And I would say the chances are zero voluntarily giving up. And we have seen systematically this genocidal Islamic regime in Iran utilize billions of its resources, fueled by the very same anti-Semitism that saw the annihilation of Jews in a final solution before their eyes, even as the Allies were nearing. That is what we're